will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A tactical approach is palpable if this animal is fallible. But that conclusion is laughable, so if we're all detachable from the mandible, you see it now?
And welcome to World Blockchain Roundtable today. I'm your host for today, Litecoin, Lisa Mighty Davis.
Hey, Lisa.
All the things. Good to see you
Hey,
guys.
Lisa.
Today we have our other hosts are Greg from Rivet and I Am for I Am. You can connect with all of us on den.social. Hopefully Sean's going to be joining us. And let's see.
I have an update on Joe Rote. Joe Rote is unable to attend today because he's in the tunnels of New York searching for John. Let's hope he makes it back with John.
Oh,
hopefully
goodness.
he tuned his phasers before he went in.
Yes.
Well,
Because if he thinks they're set to stun and they're not, man, he's gonna have trouble.
Right.
all my best to Joe on his adventure to find John. Good friends looking out for each other. So we have, let's start with.
We really need to write that as the plot of a thriller movie. I feel like we could get that on Tubi.
I think it would have to be like a choose your own adventure book. And then you'd be able to like pick different outcomes of where John is or where you could find John depending
Or
on.
like kind of like Black Mirror Banshee mixed with what was that game called Fright Night from the 80s?
I don't know.
Like one of the first CD-ROM games where you could pick the ending.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Throwback. There, guys, for you.
Okay, so first, a quick update on WBRT layer ownership tokens, known as LOT distribution from last week's episode. Each host last week will receive 55 LOT. Each topic contributor from last week will receive 27 LOT. This week's themes were nominated by, I'll give you three guesses. I am or I am.
Yep.
These will ownership tokens come with perpetual passive income, free edits, and governance votes. An update on the WBRT DAO theme suggestions are due next Wednesday. So everybody needs to get your theme suggestions in so you can get more LOT. The theme of the week this week. I'm sorry, Greg, what?
Oh, go ahead.
The theme of the week this week is elections on the blockchain nominated by Y'all Weird. So we'll go right into the community questions. Hold on one sec. We're gonna let
Good thing he wasn't calling into this show.
No, he had an important call that he might have to take while we were live, so I told him no problem.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yep. So when he's finished, we'll pop him back on here.
Call somebody while they're on live stream and the audio from the phone can be heard through the microphone. You get the same effect of calling into a radio show and not turning the volume down on the radio.
While you're listening. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
that would be terrible.
Except for it's sharper and the range on these speakers are better. And most of us have them in our ears. So we're not going to do that to you guys.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So let's see. This is him talking about the elections on the blockchain nominated by Y'all Weird. So we can go right into the questions.
Cool. Do we want to briefly touch on any cool theme suggestion ideas that anybody has?
Oh, good idea.
Because I know you always come up with a few really good ones.
No, I'm so jaded right now with the world. I don't have too many suggestions. We do have school starting back, and there is a really cool video where this guy went in to the Vatican, which we all have many thoughts about that. But he was talking about, it was kind of more of that Terrence Howard kind of talk about that math is wrong and that prime numbers we thought were these random numbers, but actually any number more than 5 is the number times itself, or was it times 2 plus 1 always equaled 24. I'll send you the video. And I'll post
number
it
games like that are so amusing. Because technically there's an infinite number of ways to sum numbers to get to 24. If you want to be really creative, you can start doing stuff like introducing imaginary numbers with absolute values and then summing those, and like do a bunch of weird, completely trivial maths, and you can make any number add up with any other set of reasonably small
He was
things.
talking about numerology, but then also including
where you wanna go.
geometry and the patterns and how there's patterns all around us. And that's what the math it's like our right, we've only been taught left lobe math, not to include, music is math.
Right. No, exactly. It's more like your brain adapts in different regions, and actually it's not even lobe based. Now we know that. I took a really cool, like around 2017, I took a really cool computational neuroscience course. It blew my mind. I learned so much about the brain.
Interesting.
The crazy thing about it is it's really regional. And if you have an area that gets damaged and you relearn how to talk to a person with a stroke, a different region of their brain becomes adapted language not damaged. The brain is kind of like a general purpose computer that learns by feel.
That makes a lot of sense. So my son had a massive stroke and coded for like 4 minutes when he was 2 months old, when he was during one of his heart surgeries. And they told us like he's never going to walk, all these things. And he was late walking, but because he was so young when it happened, the brain grew around it, like around you can see the brain damage on a scan. But they're like, he shouldn't be able to sit up. He shouldn't be able to talk. Right. He shouldn't be able to walk.
And it's a resilient machine, man. It is an amazing, resilient machine. Each of us has one of those in our heads, and we can't build anything like it yet. We're trying desperately, and the best we can do is ChatGPT and deepfake.
Predictive text that we've lifted to a form of.
We've got a long way to go, and you got to admit our stuff's pretty advanced. Kudos to the brain. You've got a super piece of hardware.
We could do a whole episode. There's one theme. So we're discussing. I am glad you're back. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to take that call.
That's okay. I knew I was trying. We knew that was going to be a possibility, but we're discussing possible themes because those are due by Wednesday.
So the last one was medical, or?
Well, I was talking about math because we're learning this new form of math called the math map, and it's about like using geometry and music and how God or the universe's infinite design, kind of like looking at the spine as we're not looking at both sides of the whole picture of math, and how it unpacks all around us to show that there is a higher
math is
being or life that created the creator.
Kids express advanced level math when they start coloring things, essentially. And they learn to stay inside of lines and or go out of them with intent, right? Like that's advanced math that up until the last decade regular computers couldn't even do. They still suck at trying to color inside the lines when it comes to pixels. We've all seen them screw up hands,
okay. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating. It's a great topic. I didn't learn to love math until I found out that I was really good at abstract mathematics and I sucked at arithmetic. I thought all math was the practical plugging in of the integers, and plugging and chugging is not my thing. If you guys remember that little adage, but as it turns out, I love Fourier transforms and I think they're amazing. But
wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't even thought about any themes. And yes, they're due this coming Wednesday.
This Wednesday, yeah.
All right, so we need to start putting them in.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about it. I think I'm going to make a note and do the introduce the math map to you guys and some of those ideas that we can discuss, and maybe how to integrate blockchain with it, or
how do we do a lot of math computing on blockchains explicitly? I don't think we do yet. We do basic accounting, but that's all we've really gone as far as doing anything with it.
But not like putting calculations in the blocks to happen in the future. Is that what you're thinking?
Or like, what if we had, because you could easily extend the concept of blockchain into more than 2 dimensions of data, right? It can be more than a spreadsheet. It could be a 3D grid with embedded data on all sides. You could have a capsule network based design for a database or a 3D database on a blockchain, and you can do unique computations with that you can't do as easily with a rows and columns database.
Mhm.
I wouldn't even be able to wrap my brain around. I'll call you for tutoring, Greg.
We really need to have Austin for this one, man. He can paint a picture of it that doesn't sound alarmingly complex.
All right.
So
A good way to pick a theme too is just to see what's trending in the world,
Mhm.
and then think through a blockchain solution and plug
Like-
that in. That's Now I don't know on an assassination attempt how blockchain can solve that problem, but
Well, there's a lot of data that could be collected around
well,
it.
there you go, and
process.
preserved for
it can tell the public without having to ask who's to blame for screwing that up.
Yes.
Because the plan can be
Even-
published in advance immutably, and they can see who didn't check in.
Mhm.
Or
That could
what
be helpful.
or a trend in the past that mirrors, like I am, and I did a show earlier this week, and he did the history of Secret Service, and it's very interesting or telling, possibly, depending on your
Mhm.
thoughts, how directors would stay in position even after assassinations or assassination
Mhm.
attempts. And it's like,
Uh,
well, why did that happen?
Fired. They didn't get
This is
fired.
an interesting framing, though, guys. What's worse, do you think? Crypto anarchy or totalitarian mass surveillance and censorship? Because the argument that they're going to make against having free markets that are completely unimpeachably unbreakable, right? Like blockchain in its idealized form, nobody can revert a transaction, nobody can find out who you are unless you want them to. It's just crypto anarchy with money, right? Like if you had that, then you would have assassination markets that you couldn't interdict by monitoring the financials of.
Oh my goodness. Didn't think of that. There you go. Anarchy and blockchain. There's a theme.
There's one.
Yeah. Paid assassination rackets and blockchains.
With blockchain. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Oh
Can
my
we stop them? Can we prevent them? Ought we?
Yeah. Only if they use the privacy protocols, but we can discuss that on that
I would
theme.
posit that the number of people murdered by drones has probably outnumbered the people who have been murdered by sniper bullets at least 10-1 already. And we haven't had drones for very long.
Yeah. Good point.
I saw an article
Well-
where they were deploying more drones to,
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the Gaza area, but
Blockchain and ChatGPT recording the conversations in blockchain.
Yep. All those
I don't know.
hallucinations can never be forgot.
that's where I don't understand why people trust it so much when they
It's-
know these hallucinations happen and that
You
they're
can-
bringing up, fake law.
There's certain
Yeah.
things you can trust it with, and there are certain things that you cannot.
Okay.
I like to push the envelope with it. And I like
what
to
you can-
argue with it.
You can definitely trust it to output prose. If you want to put factual content in it, you better know where it's going. Because you're going to have to either fact check what it puts in or put the facts you want it to regurgitate in first by paste, and
Mhm.
then check to see that it reproduced them accurately after you pasted it to them.
But
That's the
then
way
it's
I do it
just
if I wanna write
processing
real stuff.
your information. It's not.
Oh yeah, it's a great
Um,
crutch for somebody like me who has no ability to output prose and volume.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so everybody who's watching, think of themes and get on din.social and project themes. And then if your theme wins, that's what we're going to talk about. It's all
Yep.
by vote.
And absolutely, if you seem like a cool person who comes up with great ideas consistently, those people oftentimes end up here hanging out with us talking. So if you have aspirations to get your career in live streaming started, we are a great place to enter the gate because we don't close it on you.
That's a great
Well
point.
said. Thank you.
Well said. Well said. Well, so should we jump into y'all
Let's-
weirds
Yeah.
questions? Or this was his. Do we read his proposal first? Or
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and read his proposal.
sorry.
I think it's just elections on the blockchain, right?
Oh,
Nominated
that's
by
it?
Y'all
Okay.
Weird.
y'all weird elections on the blockchain. So then we can jump down to the questions. I'm sorry, that's where you had it. I didn't know.
Episode 165. Can you believe that?
So sometimes you will write like a real long intro for your theme. So I didn't know if we needed to add context to elections on the blockchain.
Never know.
Yeah. So first question is by Darox. And he says, how do you imagine the simplest solution introducing blockchain voting? The simplest. So Greg, you want to go first?
Oh, yeah. Yes. And the simplest one is as simple as it can be, but no simpler. So this will sound a little more complex, but I've got my reasons. I want to have the machines manufactured in a secured facility. These are going to be boxes that look like you're hauling in a PA for running a live music show at a place that doesn't usually have PA. You're going to roll in your racks and you're going to pop it out. What you're doing instead is you're under armed guard, bringing in these trusted computing environments that are going to run individual nodes of this vote chain. The machines will be plugged in to the voting machines and they'll record them. And then as soon as that's over, will be immediately removed by their security. You will wheel the things out, stick them on an armored car, and take them to be tallied somewhere where the machines do all the work and no human can intervene. Humans will be able to watch, though, because as soon as they plug them back in to count them, they'll be connecting to a public network.
But not plugged into a public network the whole time.
Right.
I would think
not until you are counting read data only, and you've already got no ability to write to them, because the only way you write to that machine as it's designed is the plug that goes from the voting machine to the box. There is no internet computer in there until you take the innards out and you set it on the missing module. Right. That's the only way you can make sure that the internet's not manipulating them and people aren't manipulating them.
Who are the people that are wheeling these machines around and in
the same sort of people that you would trust with armored cars, bonded in a similar sort of way.
Interesting.
Probably a private firm would bid on it, is how I'd want to do it for me.
With body cams.
However you want to cam them up.
Interesting.
We could even have multiple modules on this. They could be running a verifiable instance in the car to make sure that they don't make any unscheduled stops on the route that's prescribed. Like we could literally pin power to the wall for the powerless to watch, and they would be powerless to stop us from doing it if we built it the right way.
Chain of command is chain of custody. Excuse me. Chain of custody is extremely important and something that's lacking currently. So that's what you're talking about there. I think it works.
Yep. See, and it needs to run on trusted computing too. Like that, I want to make that point. So I don't know how many people know what trusted computing is. This is where you've got a public-private key to the calls you make from the software to the CPU. The CPU doesn't execute code that is not signed with the private key of the public key of that chip that is also secret from anybody outside of it. Right. So you have the ability to ensure that the code that is running on it is the code that came from the open source library that everybody approved.
Yeah.
That was the simplest solution you could come up with, Greg. Are you serious? Okay. I am. What's your simplest solution?
Well, shout out to Derek for this question. The KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. Simplicity allows for security. And I firmly believe in that. There is a group right now that is using, well, let me say this. Our current system is analog, if you will, even though we have voting machines and this kind of thing, and we have to go to a polling place, or there's mail-in ballots in different parts of the world, and a lot of parts of the world have already outlawed mail-in ballots. They've because of the security that goes with that. So I'm not going to go too far into that rabbit hole. But there is a simple solution already, and I believe it still is one that's mobile. If we can just about do everything without going to a physical polling place, if we can do it on our phones, then I think we can secure it that way, and it can be done in a efficient and actually keep it simple method, the KISS principle. there's a group, and it's called, I had to bring it up. It's called TrueVote. I think it's truevote.org. And Brett Morrison, and some of you might know him, he's been kind of a Bitcoin maximalist for a long time. He's a computer scientist. He's worked with SpaceX and a variety of other, massive startups. And he got into Bitcoin early, and he's got a working demo on using a current voting system that's actually utilizing the Bitcoin blockchain. And he says that his system will scale, and it's simple. And like I said, he's got a working demo. And his comment was, we do everything on our phone now, so why don't we just vote with our phone and use Bitcoin as part of that transaction function?
There's a lot of security risk in that data. Like that could be exploited very easily by people who are adept at man-in-the-middle attacks, and the network infrastructure I don't think is there. Like that's my personal feeling.
I'm going to push back just a little bit in that I'm going to say that if you think if you're writing to a blockchain, and you're using your private key, that's the same as a transaction is the same as a vote. So think of it in those terms.
Yeah, I do.
Then you're saying blockchain like Bitcoin is not secure, Greg.
Well, MetaMask, the smartphone app, is definitely not secure compared to the blockchain, right? Node.js and the libraries you import with it every time you get an update are not secure. The more moving parts you add to the software infrastructure, the more it gets more complex than the physical world by a lot, real quick.
But if you think of it as a transaction on a blockchain, and that's what a vote is, just like a DAO vote, right?
I like this idea. I do.
Yeah. And it's good to give some pushback, but I think he has tried to keep it simple because he wanted it on our phone. Now, is he using an Oracle? I don't know how he's doing it with Bitcoin. I don't know. Is he using an Oracle, which also lends an issue to a problem.
Well, consider this. Consider the standard that I'm trying to hold it to is no appearance of impropriety as possible.
Good point.
So you'd have to be able to explain to people how the machine works. And that means explaining how none of the software can be attacked too, like at any layer.
Right.
So I think that's a harder problem than just writing a DApp.
True. Now, if his question was, if I read his question, let me say this: if he changed his question to say, "How do you imagine the simplest solution, for voting," and not insert the word blockchain, then it would be just pure paper ballots, right? And maybe even dipping our finger in ink, in purple ink or something.
Ideally, the most secure one would be like biometrically authenticated too.
Yes. Yeah. Here's my DNA.
Leave a little blood mark on it.
Here's my DNA.
Your finger and
my DNA voted a certain way.
If that's
we need
true,
to knock out all these DNA people that voted a certain way.
Oh, Lord. You could combine what I was talking about, using the phone. We use our biometric on our phone already as a form of security, or 2FA. I don't know. So I was thinking the paper ballot thing. There is a theory out there that may have already been used, and it seems pretty simple. That it's not that the vote is on blockchain, but the all the things surrounding the vote are on blockchain, so that you can prevent things like extra ballots being used or things like that. And so you have a paper ballot that does have a watermark or something on it, that is put on the blockchain, so that then when you are counting the votes, what's a valid vote or not. You don't have to know who placed the vote. You don't have to. You just know that those are valid votes.
If you wanted to use crypto assets to do it, it might be kind of a cool model too, to have like a printing of a ballot be represented as the minting of an NFT instead, such that you would mint an NFT that would give you the right to record to a certain database, and then you could vote after you verified and authenticated by generating the NFT with your wallet.
Is there a way to fractionalize an NFT?
Yeah, you can. There's the idea basically is like DAOs can be created that
Okay.
can go and interface directly with like NFT markets, but in this case, it would be obvious that was happening, right? Like if you were trying to use Partybid to do voting, all you'd be doing would be reducing the voting power of your vote down to just one ballot for a bunch of people.
Well,
So
I'm
I
just
don't think
thinking
that's
that might be more secure
big of a
is if
secret.
each vote was one NFT, and so it was whole once all the votes came in.
Mhm.
I don't know. Just
Yeah,
It's not a
that
bad
makes
idea.
No, it
Fraction
makes-
the process, you sort of mint it in advance and then fractionalize it as people printed their ballots.
Mhm.
I like that. That's a clever
That's
idea.
interesting. Yeah, clever. Nice.
Well-
it would make it feel visible, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We still have to get trusted computing environments at every place the data touches, though. Otherwise, we don't know if anybody's loaded malicious clones or malicious forks of the software that they're supposed to be running, and that can lead to shenanigans, or at least the appearance that shenanigans could have happened. And that's really the
As a
problem with
joke, when if I were to vote for Trump and I click on Trump to vote, would he pick his mugshot as his NFT to click on? No,
I don't know. Maybe he would. Maybe he
Very
would choose to let
popular.
an algorithm. Maybe he would choose to let an algorithm optimize for what it expects your preferences are based on all the data that it's got
Right.
on you.
What they would want to serve up to you.
It's sort of like the images next to the news tiles on Google News. Have you guys ever looked at those specifically and seen what they're doing after you refresh?
No,
they used to change pretty regularly in your face. Like if you open a private browser and then open a browser that you're logged into separately, you get different images.
Oh, true. Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
interesting.
Yep.
Interesting.
Should we move on to the next one?
I think we should. I was hoping Sean would join us. I know he had some storms last night, so he might be able to join later. But let's go ahead and go on to the next question.
Darox again, the great Darox.
Xerox again. These are great. Okay, next question. Do you think that a whole new voting system should be introduced, or rather should the current one be modernized by using blockchain? IM, you want to go first this time?
Well, my first thought is, when you implement a new program or new application, you always kind of want to run in parallel to validate, both of them. So that was kind of my thought was, well, maybe we'd run parallel. But so then now I got to vote for a referendum or a person twice. That doesn't quite make sense. Maybe that could all be done during, kind of testnet phase, but it brings up a lot of questions and a lot more complexity, but something as important as our vote, which people I think have forgotten that how sacred voting used to be, how important it was. And so you're supposed to get it right. I'm going to give you a quick story about my 18th birthday, and a few months later I was able to vote in the first general election. Well, more than a few months, but anyway, my mom told me, listen, I want you to go down and you're going to, because everyone knew I was going to vote. It was going to be my first vote in the general election, my first vote for a
Who was running, man?
Ronald Reagan.
If I date you, perfect.
No,
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
Awesome.
So I was able to vote for Ronald Reagan on my first election. Now my mom says, here, I want you to take my car, which she had this nice, beautiful Cadillac. I want you to go, go vote, go put on a nice, put on some nice clothes. And I put on a suit and tie.
I love it.
And I'm
Take your hat off. That's a dollar bill, boy.
I climb in her big, beautiful Cadillac, and I drive down to go vote. And I come back, and my mom had my uncle and aunt and a few other people over, some neighbors, to celebrate with a big cake, first vote. And so it was a very important thing in my household to be able to cast your first vote as an adult.
Interesting.
As an 18-year-old. And now I don't vote because I don't believe in the system. Ironic, isn't it?
I
So
know.
I don't think there's anything terribly. I think all
What a big
patriots have a duty not to vote right now.
I would concur in many ways. So anyway, that's my history, my story.
As a general rule, not
a
necessarily
real
that kind of question.
how important voting used to be and how it felt and how we all felt, at least in my household and many others, how important voting was. So when you're introducing a new voting system and you're thinking in terms of people that think like I did when I was 18 years old, casting my first vote, it's critically important to get it right. And it's critically important for people to have trust in that system, and trust in whatever new system is implemented. We as humans, we hate change. We resist change, and changing the voting system. And someone that has gone through that experience that I said, or feels the same way today about voting, that's a giant leap, almost a leap of faith, right? So it brings up a lot of questions. So I think if you're going to do it, you got to make sure that you have earned everyone's trust in whatever new voting system you have. And I believe firmly that blockchain can do just that. And that's probably why we don't trust our voting systems, because blockchain is not in place. And it needs to be modernized for us to think of when we're at 2030.
And there's like this sort of phenomenon, right? Of you go outside and it's cold, or it's cold outside when you go outside and it's cold, right? Like if you see election results that seem patently absurd, like unusually high turnouts in a country known for its apathy at the polls, things like that spark people's curiosity in a negative way. And the second you spark that curiosity in a negative way, you have to have these systems sitting there going, nope, in the respect you're worried about it, we're bulletproof, and here's how.
Yes.
And if you can't do that, then your voting system's broken.
Absolutely. So anyway, I think, it has to be modernized just for scaling, if nothing else, right? Can you imagine 30 billion people on this planet and even
this was going to be my point, man. There are two factors here to consider major revision to the way that we handle representative action with the legal means to violence, right? If we're going to apply deadly or brutal or confiscatory or imprisoning force to anybody, we do it through this machine we call the government, right? And the reason some people are really uncomfortable, like myself, with using it for a whole lot of stuff is because there are some things that a gun isn't a very good tool at the end of the day for a society cooperating for the common good. It's not pro-social to aim the guns for everything. So the government shouldn't be running stuff that it would be insulting for most people to be threatened at gunpoint to do, like get on the subway or flush the toilet appropriately or whatever, right? Like these kinds of little bits of our lives. But human beings, from the time we invented this system, have gotten a lot smarter just because there's so much more information in the world, right? If you look at the 1700s, you could know everything that you could know in the 1700s as a farmer in the United States. We all probably learned all that stuff 10 times over, just going through K through 12. Not necessarily all as useful, but quantity-wise and complexity-wise more. And then you add in computing and modern media. Like, those people wouldn't be able to wrap their minds around it, founding fathers included, right? It's alien to them. And we invented the systems we invented because people were dumb, especially back then. The majority of folks literally couldn't be trusted to check a box. If that box meant the policy changed exactly the way the vote came out. So we didn't give them access to policy. We created representative government. And then we came up with these systems of electing representative government based on what was feasible with paper and horses carrying boxes full of them. Right? Like that's why the timelines, that's why the deadlines, that's why all of it's structured the way it's structured, because it had to be managed. And it had to be managed in a way that the people who put the votes in felt like they were having an impact, but they weren't allowed direct impact because direct impact was a recipe for disaster back then, right? I think we're all smart enough now to be enough over that basic level of competence. We can peel back some of the layers of republic, give people more direct access to policy. So that's one consideration. The other consideration is procedure, like all the rules that we made. They're around tabulating paper votes in the legislatures, and they're around the processes needed to travel from your farm that's 2 days away on horseback.
Sure.
We haven't updated any of those procedures really since then. We built on them and made them more crufty, right? Like instead of re-architecting, we added a bolt-on to the side that made it work in this context that we needed to, or whatever. It's ultimately how we ended up with the freaking administrative state. Right?
Yes.
We ran to the edge of the efficiency of the system, and because inertia is such a strong force in bureaucracy, did not rewrite it. Instead, we added on to it.
Right.
And I see the way out of this ultimately as rethinking the fundamental nature of what we're trying to do, which is make a group decision about the application of violent force and when that's appropriate and when it will be done and when it won't.
Ultimately, that's what it is. That's what the government's supposed to do.
Yeah,
so if we think about it like that, then the tools we have today are blockchains, and the tools we have today are computers, and the tools we have today are limited trustability, narrow AIs, but that are really good at some things and not at all at others, right? We have all of these building blocks, and I think there's a way to give people more direct access to power without as much risk of corruption, without all of this sort of intermediary disruption layer that we created called a republic back in the 1700s.
Can I interject something real quick before you answer, Lisa?
Sure. Yeah.
When Greg was talking, he also kind of spurred a thought. I remember when Scantrons were introduced in school, and you would take your test and you'd fill out the little bubbles, and and then they would scan them, and then that way they could get the quick results, and it had to be a number 2 pencil and all these different things. And I remember being introduced as a child in school, and it's kind of funny because then later, we started voting with like a Scantron, right? And then it was push the bubble, and then you had the hanging Chad debacle in Florida, in the Bush Gore vote. But that concept of introducing Scantron and filling out the bubble like a vote, but it was a test in school, prepared everyone to think that, okay, well, I used to take a test with the Scantron, I can vote with the Scantron, and it's going to be accurate. And then now my conspiratorial head kicks in and says, so they were programming you, like brainwashing you, to be able to accept a Scantron, a modernized system of voting, when in effect then the machine could then change and alter the tabulated votes, so that those in power could get the outcome that they so desired, right? Yep. So I was just, you spurred that memory as you were talking.
Dude, I remember still back in kindergarten when the first time I filled out a Scantron and they taught us how to do it was, they literally gave us a Scantron that was blank the day before the test, and they just had us fill all of the bubbles in on it, and then graded us on whether or not we stayed in the lines and filled it completely.
Wow,
it was
some serious training.
Never let it be said that Volga Germans aren't come from a long tradition of people who love rote learning.
Yes. So I mean, I of course think that we need not only a new voting system, but kind of what Greg was leaning to, I believe, is a new structure, that we don't need all this middleman power in the middle. Like, we can make votes on, like you were saying, on policy and whatever. We don't need a representation of our own voice, because that's where the real problem is right now. And I think that you feel like you're empowered because you voted. However, then they go to whoever gets chosen, and then they go make policies in lobbyist groups and conventions where the lobbyists are writing the laws that will then be introduced in Congress during the next session. So the whole thing is really just
right. And the idea that one vote, your vote, is likely in any way to change anything major about the outcome of any election ever is like slim to none and slim left town. Like, you've got better odds at winning the Powerball.
You're saying there's a chance,
right? No, exactly. There's a chance, right? Like, there are edge cases you can point at, but like, we can do better than that now. We don't need that much of a nerf buffer between human beings that live in the world and the power that runs it.
I agree completely. But how do we change that? I don't know. Maybe that's a whole other question.
This is the
Next
hard
one?
part.
Next one. Yeah, let's do the next one.
Time
Questions
hoarder.
All right. A new contributor. Time Hoarder has a great question. From end to end, what would the ecosystem look like with a blockchain-based election? Now, that is a whole ball of wax. I don't know.
This is freaking dangerous, actually. This is where it gets Orwellian, right?
Yes.
Because there are all these people, you know, one of the first like subheadings in the Crypto Anarchist Manifesto, like one of the lines in it, if you go read the Crypto Anarchist Manifesto, that anticipated blockchains and that anticipated public-private key cryptography being widely available, that powerful couldn't break. Like he wrote that authentication without identity would be the rule. And what you see looking around blockchain space right now is a whole bunch of non-starter ideas about how to try to implement decentralized identity when identity isn't what we need. Identity is a trust factor. What we really need is authentication without identity. How do you vote with that, right? How can we make that system work? And that a bunch of hard little boring problems are in there, but there's kind of a big philosophical one, right? Like, how do we connect ourselves to our citizenship officially? We don't really have a way. Social Security's number does not do that. That's not its official purpose.
Well, we're about to find out, but that's in current events.
I wish Time Hoarder was here I'd like to hear his own answer to this one. From end to end. You know, if we're using a blockchain, and I'll go back to truevote.org or whoever that, you know, whatever the URL is, but again, if it's end to end, and if it's, say, a blockchain, and it's something that I can do from my phone, I can vote from my phone, and I can vote more frequently, and it's more convenient, and the system is set that only my private key is counted, and it's only counted once. That, you know, there is really, essentially, like you said, Lisa, we've eliminated a third party. It's all a digital format. So that ecosystem is end to end. In other words, it's from me and my with using my private key that validates who I am, that I have the authority to vote, that I'm a citizen, or I'm within the same jurisdiction of the vote, whatever it might be. I'm eligible to vote. It's a legal vote. It's a legal vote that will be cast, and it will be counted properly and only once. All of these things, then that is kind of how the ecosystem would be. I don't see that ecosystem, because let's face it, nearly every person in this modern world now has a phone and a smartphone. Now, granted, I know there are third world countries that, you know, that is a long and a big stretch. But your most active Western world democracies, or republics, or constitutional republics, whatever you want to call them, those people vote, and they could vote with their phone. And so that ecosystem, I still say, is one that's a mobile, and it's like a blockchain transaction that's free and it's private. But yet on the blockchain, we can see all the votes. And keeping it simple as a simple way to explain it, again, let's say that my vote, my ID, is a serial number. Nobody knows that what my serial number is, so they don't know how I voted, but they can see that serial number. And so can I. I can look it up on a blockchain explorer, look up my serial number, and see that my vote was cast. It's date and time stamped, so it was prior to the cutoff. It was applied correctly to the right candidate, or to the right within the right jurisdiction, or referendum, whatever. And I can see all the votes. I can see how many voted for each candidate or each referendum. And therefore, it can be trusted because it was written to a blockchain that cannot be altered, changed, deleted. It's immutable. And it's public yet private. So long as I don't share what my quote unquote serial number is, kind of like a VIN number on a car, or whatever you want to call it, my address, my blockchain address, then it is, you know, pseudo private. And
we need something like moon runes. Like you guys remember in The Hobbit where they go to Elrond and they're like, you have to view this, under this moon in this season, and that's the only time this is going to be decodable. Otherwise, we won't be able to read it. We need something like that, but for smartphones. Before, like, there needs to be like some kind of ubiquitous self-imposed geofencing that that gets hashed and validated as something within the range of person who lives here. In order to keep it from being a thing where like a bot farm of bought out old cell phones can be used.
That's what I was wondering, is like having it be cell phone linked, you'd have to have it be identity based.
Because if something that important was on a chip.
Or I'm thinking about, we just registered a truck. If each state was responsible for, who would be the one that would be responsible for or would have authority to say whether someone's a citizen or not?
Right,
like
exactly. No one knows that question very clearly. There's
don't have
a basic idea of law around it, but there's
passports, right?
Well, passports are actually evidence that you proved it to somebody who can issue a passport, not evidence.
Okay,
that you
so
are a
if
citizen.
everyone had passport and a ID, like I am talking about with your passport, a private and public key with your passport, and then you could somehow enter like your token or vote, or let's call it a transaction, into something private like MWeb, but then be able to come out, like, would that?
See, I think maybe the Zcash architecture.
Your voter registration card has an ID attached to it.
But anyone can get a voter registration card just by getting a driver's license.
Right.
So that's
by breaking into the facility where they're manufactured and printed.
Yeah, it has to go to the passport has.
Well, let's use the post office. Let's say that there's an office set up in the post office to validate, two-factor identification, if you will, or something like that, to validate who you are, and provide you your private key for login to vote, et cetera, and that remains active, right? Something like that. Then there's also provisional voting. Provisional voting says
that's a good point.
Yeah, provisional voting is the issue of you've walked through the line, now you're ready to vote, and they say, oh, well, we don't have you on our list. You're not a registered voter for this location. No, I am. Well, they give you a provisional ballot. You still can cast your vote, and then you are later validated as a registered voter for that district to vote within that district. So it's a provisional ballot waiting for authenticity of who you are.
Here's how I would do it. I would train an AI exclusively on answering the question citizen, not citizen, faced with different factors of authentication. You go into a black box room where if you want to go read the open source library for this, how this algorithm was trained, and look at the data sets that it was trained on, have fun reading the rows of a bunch of key embeddings. It's not really going to reveal much to anybody at all. Anybody determined enough to glean information about you specifically from that is going to get you anyway. But this thing could just record to your digital ID that you authenticated, that you are a citizen, to it, and keep nothing else. And if we got to like a 99.9% success rate in incorrectly sorting citizen from not citizen, then we could all probably trust the photo booth size black box you had to go into with your identification credentials to get your anonymous but true government authentication or voting in the United States authentication credential. Well, and you could walk out of that thing, and we could have like a system that was meant to trash that data every year.
Then that region, or I keep saying state, but sometimes there's voting issues just for a city or a county or whatever. So whatever that issue is, has jurisdiction, would know the entities within it that are voting, and they could submit the NFT or whatever, the fractionalized NFT, just to those people to cast their key either way. And then the NFT would come back together. for that jurisdiction or that issue.
Right.
But it
So
is interesting that you're talking about the post office because, first of all, they do have patents for blockchain voting that were released when all that flood of patents came out in 2016, I believe.
That was the year they started ICOP, where they started spying on everybody on social media.
Oh, interesting. I figured it was way before that. But
The U.S. Postal Inspector Service, man. Those guys have jurisdiction in your house based on where your mailbox is positioned.
interesting. Then there was also one of this guy, and I can't remember his name, Michael something. He was years ago when I first got into crypto and blockchain and all that. He wore big fuzzy coats and dressed terrible. I don't know. But he went to explain blockchain to his parents at like the country club or whatever, their little group. And the way he explained it was so simple. And the post office already works this way. You have a mailbox. You have a public key, which is your PO box that everybody can send you mail, but only you have the private key on the backside to get that out. Right. And I've used that over and over again when we travel and teach people about blockchain. So the post office is already set up to function, to allow information in one way, but then to know that somebody took the key, their private key, to receive that information or engage with that information the other way. So
yeah,
it is interesting.
You do run into the problem then of like cameras monitoring sites too, like that. So, I don't if there's a digital equivalent for your public key inbox, then we would have to probably harden the security around that a bit too. Like there's just a lot of adversarial thinking. I do a lot of wargaming for security for Rivet with Austin. We like sit around and go, what if somebody wanted to destroy this system or degrade it or something, right? Like, how would you do it if you were them?
Right. Going through those exercises for security walkthroughs.
Yeah. So, and we would have to do that for every step in this process. If we really
kind of like the Secret Service, we should make sure that building's protected. Just
right. Make sure the slope's not too great on roofs for them to get there and do their jobs.
Right.
They might roll off.
Oh my gosh. Should we move on to the next question?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Wow.
This will be a good one. That I am where I am.
Look at Milton Friedman, and we've already mentioned Ronald Reagan today. All right.
Mr. Milton Friedman.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead
and explain this? This is long.
Can you unpack this one for us?
Sure.
We go back to the top. I don't read that fast. Yeah.
Oh, the quote, Milton Friedman, "Why government is the problem." It was one of his.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's a great piece.
And then Ronald Reagan said, "Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem." All right.
Very astute way to put it.
This is more political than blockchain, I think. The problems we have in our voting systems around the world is not using the proper technology, example blockchain, as a solution. The biggest issue with our voting systems are the politicians and our own governments do not want to solve them. If we had free and fair elections, the politicians would be replaced and the governments would act upon the will of the citizens. Examples of the corrupt voting systems include not requiring voter ID, counting non-valid mail-in ballots, dead citizens voting, non-citizens voting, systems don't equal 1 scan equals 1 vote, numerous other issues such as chain of custody.
Right.
So,
and the fact that they count them in secret and the process is oblique because security by obscurity is the best thing they know.
That's right. I can't see my vote. I can't track my vote. I can't verify that my vote was
and that's for your own good. Trust us in this room with all of them. We'll come out with a number that's fair, we promise. There's a lot of trust me, bro, in that. There's way too much trust me, bro, in that.
Bingo.
And it all goes to electoral college anyway, so really doesn't matter.
So the question after this long-winded thing, I'm so
this is the problem my rolly carts were designed to solve.
So how do we, the people, oust the donor class and institute real voting solutions like blockchain?
Well, we certainly can't do it by voting.
Oust the donor class and institute real voting.
So the donor class is controlling the representatives, and they're controlling the government, which is prohibiting new voting systems to be implemented that are fair and just, free and accurate.
Right.
Therefore,
Congress
they've
is a nexus of
inserted
power
the donor
and
class,
there's
your
no
rich
patronage.
billionaires and big corporations, they don't want to change government in the way it's functioning. So the way that to prevent that from changing is to prevent the votes from being counted correctly.
So what we would
So
really
they're
need
going
would
to
be
insert themselves as a third party. Blockchain eliminates a third party,
right.
and they're
Getting them to do
inserting
that would
themselves as
require a
third party.
lot of money paid to the right K Street firms.
Mm.
And it would probably take years and think tanks being
But
established.
then you just have same boss as the same new boss as the old boss. It's
Right.
more corruption fueled by money.
Well, you'd have to
or-
like create a triage room and then a clean room where you did the dirty stuff that you have to do to win, right? Like you would literally have to firewall off from the thing you were building, the things you would have to do to get it built.
Are there any countries that the people living there believe that their votes are legitimate or that they have a good system? I guess
Best
don't
I
want
can
to-
tell, North
to
Korea, those people are genuinely brainwashed.
They think it. Yes. Okay. Great.
Oh,
Is the
good
way
one,
I
Greg.
worded that
So,
question.
That's a great
All right.
answer, Greg, because she's thinking of a voting system that actually works.
And Greg was like, "Well, here's the one country where they believe in it."
Well, they
Okay.
get to elect the one guy every year, and if they don't enthusiastically elect him enough with their facial expressions, then they get picked up.
That was a home run, Greg.
That
Out
was
of the
good.
park.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So how do we oust the
So I
donor?
keep talking.
I don't know. Do we have solutions for this? I mean, the agorism, I've really enjoyed our videos together. I am. And yesterday, I know we aren't going to go to top topics just yet, but yesterday was the MOAS day with the silver squeeze. And I took my son and we went to a coin shop and he got to have great education by some of these gentlemen that were in there. He chose what silver eagle he wanted and I picked mine.
Cool.
I got a better deal,
Nice.
but it's fine.
So I have a new idea to throw at you guys. Actually, you've heard this one, at least the prototype of it.
Mhm.
That sort of aha moment we had a few weeks ago where I was trying to explain how I might do a litocracy-based executive that would function within the structure of our existing government, but be picked entirely by lottery. The sort of the
Like
way
a jury pool.
you, like a jury pool and jury duty right now. You get pulled, you go in, you do your duty, you leave, right? Imagine if right before you needed to decide to sign or veto a bill, randomly selected one citizen became the executive for one decision. They make the decision. The next selection takes place. The next person decides. It's random. It's randomized. It's obfuscated mathematically, so that there's no predicting who will get elected for the next micro decision to be made to any position of power. But the eligibility pool is anybody who has gone into the black box photo booth thing I talked about earlier and gotten the authentication on their signed the right transaction on their private key with their private key. You could then just you could take the exact structure of government we have right now, and before anybody made any decision, randomly select a new legislator, randomly select a new committee head, randomly select another president or another vice president or whatever, right? Whoever's making the call, randomly selected right then and there from an eligible citizen. You take the need for voting out of all of that because every decision is being made by a new randomly chosen person.
What if it was a randomly chosen group of people so that you didn't have a crisis of someone not capable voting?
Well, you would give it like 5 seconds and then move on to the next person who might or might not be paying attention, right? The idea would
Not
be
even
like
paying attention. What if they are not?
the answer
capable?
would always be get a new person if that person can't figure out how to push the button.
But who says whether that person is capable or not?
Well,
Does-
that's the
does it
issue.
get
It's
to
work.
The question of that you have to weigh against the existing system we have right now and what we get with that, right? Like
It's almost like
people we're
running
sending
parallel.
there go a long way to verify that trust with us, and that's what campaigning is supposed to do. What campaigning does is it just provides a door for corruption. We would be way better off with somebody developmentally disabled making a call about whether or not this policy went into effect, than we would be having a system based on whoever can campaign for the most bucks and by the most votes with the most ridiculous promises gets elected to office, right? Like, I would have any grocery store bagger of any mental capacity make those decisions any day over the people we send right now.
Right, because what's happening is the people that are making those decisions right now, they're not acting in the best interest of we the people.
Mhm.
They might be smart and well educated in a particular field, whatever, military intelligence or the industrial military complex, and they can make a good solid decision on which, armament we should spend our money on or whatever. Or maybe someone from the educational sector who's come up through the ranks and is now elected to Congress, and they've had a strong educational background. So matters of education, they're experts in. However, it's kind of like what you're talking about using a jury pool, Greg, is kind of like the wisdom of the crowd. Actually, the wisdom of the crowd and what Dental Social is part of, it kind of works. It's an amazing psychology phenomena that the wisdom of the crowd is actually more accurate as a whole than even the experts. And it's been proven over and over and over for over 100 years. They've been doing these tests. And it's wisdom of the crowd. So pulling from a just random group of people to be plugged in for a small time frame to act in government, I think it works for the most part, except for there's a lot more complexity in government that unfortunately creates all the red tape.
And my answer for you, my answer for you that I know you'll love, right? My answer for you that I know you'll love, right, is anything too complex for that system is no business of the government.
Yes, bingo. Again,
Which is what we should have had instead of an administrative state, really. They should have been like, well, I guess we can't govern that because we don't know how.
Right.
Mm.
If we wanted to, because if voting would fix the system that we're currently in,
Right.
and people believe that if we vote, we can fix it, then the voting system has to be trusted. And so the first error is thinking that we can vote and fix it. And the second error is believing that the system is accurate and my vote actually is counted. And then the third error is that this bloated giant federal government that we have here in the US is going to fix itself with the right people at the helm. And I argue that that's impossible.
Oh, right. No, it's absolutely impossible.
So what it would take is really, like when I mentioned the donor classes, that's your wealthy corporations and wealthy individuals and your deep state, your blob, your Intel super state that hold these members of Congress with bribes or extortion, and not all of them. They just need to control the majority of them. Right.
We also send needy egomaniacs because that's the profile you need to win an election. You don't even have to coerce those people. You just have to talk to them like they're important. And
government is a magnet for sociopaths and psychopaths and narcissists.
Right? Like who enters a popularity contest for their job?
Right.
So when people talk about voter reform and lobbying reform and this kind of thing and campaign finance reform, it just isn't going to happen because the donor class or the blob in deep state, whatever you will, is in control of it. So the real issue here is it needs a giant public awareness that my vote is sacred and I want my vote to be counted, tracked, and verified. And when that becomes so hot topic, trending and popular, and a grassroots program blossoms out of that, then something like the umbrella promise that tackles the money issue in campaigning, it eliminates the money issue, then that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a grassroots movement from the bottom up because we're never going to solve it from the top down. The idea like the FBI, all we got to do is take off the top management and put in new management. You want
to wait. Actually, that won't work because that won't work at all, actually. Because those guys are political appointees, they're accountable to the executive, right?
Right.
If Trump discovers that the guy just below the appointment level is in control of an entire division that is intentionally thwarting by going against a policy initiative that he's put in place, he's given an executive order to say, FBI, do this. His guy he appointed is saying to all the people in the room, you guys must do this. And the guy doesn't do it, and he tells his whole division to disobey. You know who can fire him? Not Trump, not his appointee,
Right.
That's not allowed by law.
I know. Other than like what
You can literally
judge,
sabotaging the
Supreme Court
government
judge.
from your government job, and
I know.
uh,
You have to eliminate the whole
Yeah.
department and fire everybody. You know,
right.
like
the level under
evade-
political appointee, those are the real rulers of this country.
Right.
That's the other way to have the vote be when Greg was saying, comparing it to how are you doing it? Talking about hiring them or whatever. I was having in my mind, like if instead of voting for people, we had, okay, what qualifications do we need, whatever. And then people like applied like a job application. So it wasn't a popularity contest. That it was actually like verified qualifications for a burden, and looking at it more of like a burden. You're going to have to serve in this burden, this job, instead of this lifted leadership position.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly, Lisa. And see, we have other issues here too. We have gerrymandering reform that would have to take place. I don't know how you fix that.
Oh, we got to fix that first.
That we have politicians and people like that. Well, I think a non-citizen should be able to vote because we're impacting their lives with our votes. I was like, what?
Right.
Where's the value in citizenship? The idea of, say, ranked choice voting or scorecard voting, all these different methodologies in voting. Some people think that that's part of the solution. But, well, if you haven't tackled the money problem in the campaigning side of it, then that's just another gimmick as far as I'm concerned. Right. It might take care of the extremists on each end, but it's still not going to solve the root of the issue. The root of the issue is I am a citizen and being a citizen, I have the authority and the right to vote and have a say only because I'm a citizen.
I mean, and when you think about it, man, like we have a coin op system where the gun points where the person who puts in the most dollars says, right? Like that's literally what we have. It's more complex than that. There are a lot more people with dollars, but it's certainly not people contributing $0 who are the majority of people who live in this country who are doing regular jobs who can't afford to spend, $10,000 to go get a plate for himself and his date at the Met Gala. That's not us. None of us listening to this are doing that. In fact, if anybody doing that is listening to this, why do you go to that shit? That's ridiculous.
And please go donate to the Dragon Chain Legal Fund.
Right. If you want to eat a badly cooked piece of chicken and some crappy rice around some art, I got a projector and some crappy chicken in the freezer right now. You can come over to my place. I'll take your money off your hands.
Yeah. One last comment here is if people think that blockchain isn't a solution to our voting systems, I would point them to DAO votes, decentralized autonomous organizations that use blockchain for voting. It works. It's powerful. It's secure. And it's a great example of how that can be scaled up for, even on a small scale, like school board or sheriff or whatever.
Right.
I just want to know one of the first successful DAOs. You know what it was? It was DAI. The DAI.
Yes.
The
ETH DAI for the
DAI stablecoin.
Yes.
Their governance voting works in a way that essentially what they do is they vote on continually a certain batch of settings, and anybody at any time can go withdraw their vote from that settings file and apply it to another one that's different. And the settings file changes as soon as the mathematically prescribed by the code sized majority supports the new settings. The system auto forks itself, right?
Wow.
So you're not really voting for policies, you're voting for the way the machine runs.
Right.
Now, if we could think about our government like that, in a way that we could, if we didn't like how some piece of it was working, we might move our support from one philosophy to another, and all of the bureaucracies and bureaucrats and politicians who were supporting X, Y, or Z way of solving problem would be on the ropes before they knew it, because the policy would shift as soon as the votes moved. Right.
Right.
It would be like the polls are always open, kind of. If something starts breaking, we don't have to wait until the election to fix it.
It used to mean that being a citizen meant something. And it used to mean that being a citizen and that you could vote meant something. And that has been, demeaned and demoralized, and for folks like myself who don't trust the voting system as it is now, think it's kind of a waste of time, and don't trust our federal government, think that it needs to be reformed, or it's going to collapse upon itself anyway. If history rhymes or repeats, it's certainly showing us that. But my point I actually wanted to make here was that Dragon Chain figured this out. Dragon Chain already had a voting system in place where there was, validation of the voter prior to voting, all of these things, how it would be counted, how it could scale. It was already figured out. There are systems like Dragon Chain that had this, but it fell on deaf ears and was squashed. Why? Because the politicians and those in charge of government do not want this to take.
You got to go to Epcot, wear the Mickey Mouse hat, and hold the briefcase full of the right amount of bills before the game starts for you, right? Like if you want to get contracted to do that kind of work.
Right.
That's why the Diebold people are a dynasty, right? Like they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
There is no disrupting that little startup. Just like banking is going down kicking and screaming, right? Like they're going down, but the fact that blockchains are cryptographically secure and immutable, and they can't get anybody to change it because they're peer-to-peer, right? Like that's the only reason it's working.
What you have is you have the banksters that are floating on water, and around their ankle is one of these heavy lead balls that keeps getting heavier and heavier, and what it's getting heavier is all the money printing, and it's just going to sink them. As the system collapses, it's going to just bring those banksters down. But then the authoritative dictator will probably rise. Hopefully
well,
not.
as long as we have, though, the apparatus of violence serving it as a client, it will have an ugly collapse, right? Like the Treasury typically backs every dollar that the Fed creates with U.S. Treasuries, and then they turn around and sell those into the shadow banking system with the open market ops that they do through the New York Fed. That's how they get away with making it look like they're not printing money while they print money.
They're buying their own.
They're actually lending and borrowing from each other on an overnight basis, with a right to extend that borrow. And the thing that qualifies you to do that type of work and to make that easy money, like imagine that you could just go and say, like, let me get out $1 trillion loan from you right now using this security that you say notionally, not actually. The actual value is, well, they call it actual value. The notional value is this tiny little fraction because this thing is so far from maturity, and we don't even know what tranches of mortgages are subprime in this thing. They'll look at it and they'll go, yeah, we'll lend you the notional value of that, which is the total of all the properties included. It's $1 trillion. So here's $1 trillion in cash. We're charging you 6% interest for 24 hours. We expect payment back tomorrow. They turn around and sell that cash to you with loans.
I know. It's
and they
taxation without representation.
They pay it back the next day out of their own capital flows that you're providing them. And it's a little more complicated than that because there's two circuits in the banking system. But the rough idea is the interest that they're paying you is really just a fraction of the amount that they're making with overnight operations as they help us launder the process of printing more.
That they're stealing from us.
Right. The lump sum of cash typically goes to some like wealthy patron. Seriously, like they'll go on personal bank accounts and shit. But
or Ukraine. It's a great place for it to
personal
go.
bank accounts. I'm sure it was probably just in a private or a primary checking account with Credit Suisse under Zelensky. I'm almost certain.
Is this another one from IAM?
Yeah, but I'm going to suggest we do an audible because we're already an hour 15. And skip this question because I think we've touched on it. Some people just don't trust blockchain, and I think we've answered that.
Okay,
that's propaganda, man. Like the reason people think that, we got to do counter propaganda.
Yep.
We need to repeat.
They are uneducated.
It's not faster and louder than they're repeating that it is.
There's a meme going around right now in Normie Land on Facebook that says, "Cash in my pocket, gas in my car, I'll trust that before your digital currency and something else.
Huh.
And I was
Neat. One of those
Oh,
things lights
God.
on fire, and the other one's being actively debased by people with guns that rule them.
right. I'm
Neat,
like,
neat
you
choice there, buddies.
have no idea how centralized and controlled that dirty
Fed them
fiat
that
cash.
Kool-Aid, man. That's too complex
Oh,
of an
it's
idea for
going
the average normie.
It's everywhere. It's a meme going everywhere on Normie Land.
I
And
would,
I'm
I would be willing to bet it's like the Pfizer thing against ivermectin. Like this is horse paste, but just on a more
Oh,
subtle
yeah.
level.
It is. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Blockchain is the horse paste of
They're doing it because they're terrified of us. So it's a good sign that they're still caring. It means we have the potential to do them as much damage as we might suspect.
If history is recorded on a blockchain, they can't alter and change that history.
Yep.
So
and they can't
they're
definitely
scared of
print money anymore if they have to use a blockchain to get money.
Right.
yeah.
And
Which
then
they'll
they
have to
lose their
do if we get rid of the Fed.
and they lose their power if we start implementing a blockchain voting system. They lose that not only lose their power, they lose their position.
They
They're
lose.
voted
They lose even more than that. They lose all of the discernible vectors to power that the storied tradition of parasites that came before them have all mastered and passed on to them. They built careers learning how to manipulate the machine to their ends. The
Right.
ones that are good at it are the ones that do it at the highest levels.
Right.
Those folks stand to lose their way of life, their way of reasoning about the world if we win.
Mhm.
Very good. Well, let's go into current events. I do
When we
not
win,
have a
damn it.
meme stream. I didn't get an
No
album.
worries.
So
I
it's
just want to say before we jump into this, there has been really no news of late. It's been really a quiet week.
Right?
Nothing's been really
Right.
happening out there.
Is there a new flavor of M&M? I don't know.
Oh,
I heard
my.
that Trump is going to bring Jamie Dimon in as the new.
Let's hope that's a rumor.
Do you think that's true?
I hope it's a rumor. Well, so the only
He
way
said
I
you would
think it
consider
might
him
be
is all he
true
really said.
is that he seems to bring people in to the spotlight, and then it exposes their corruption.
Mhm.
So that would be the only way
I
that I would.
suspect Diamond was he's doing the bidding of the people who are trying to destabilize the Trump coalition, right? We know that he's like a weffer and a
Yeah.
probably hangs out with Hunter Biden and does blow off the stomach of hookers together. Like that seems they seem like those kind of people, right? Like
Yeah. If you're going to want to try to fix the economy, fix the system, grow a way out of it, the last person you want there is Diamond.
right, but if you want to send somebody to suck up and ingratiate themselves to someone, nobody knows how to do it better.
And
So I'd be
Diamond,
willing to bet.
right? Diamond is going to be behind the scenes, just like Steve Mnuchin was, and is going to sack crypto behind the scenes.
He's a
like
character assassin.
Get like altering the silver and gold markets, altering the crypto CME market, altering the the EFT markets, the derivatives and everything else in between. Even kind of like nudge
The
SEC, keep up the
DYDX, all of
pressure.
it.
Yeah, Diamond would be horrific for blockchain and horrific for crypto.
Well, there could be worse ones, right? Like if you had
True.
to pick a banker out of a hat, you might sigh a little bit sigh of relief if you got Diamond instead of like Fink from BlackRock.
BlackRock.
If you got the Black,
Yeah,
or is it Larry Fink? Is that his name? Yeah,
yeah. Larry
perfect
Fink.
name for the guy.
Is
Larry
that who
Fink would be
hired
the way worse one.
There's another rumor that the shooter was in a BlackRock commercial, but I don't know if that's true.
He
There
was.
was a paper
He was.
that he was. You can see it online. If you just look up the Pennsylvania BlackRock School, you will get it.
Ah, interesting. One newsworthy thing. We have the Great Pretender has COVID. I don't know if you guys heard that yesterday.
Oh, he's sick.
Is
He is sick.
I heard the other day.
that's a
on
brain
Babylon,
fog right there.
I read the other day on Babylon B that he's his aides said he's really just had a cold for 4 years.
I think it's been longer than that, but okay, we can go with that one.
Yeah, they call that. Yeah,
I guess he did
either
the
Parkinson's
jab
or-
then.
It seems like a
He
mix
got
of
the jab if
Parkinson's
he's
and
got
dementia to
COVID.
me.
I'm
That's
sure.
all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, pump that shit into him as far as I'm concerned.
Get your booster, Joe.
I don't normally promote the idea of slowly
Yeah.
poisoning people to death, but in the case of somebody who's actively trying to destroy my livelihood and the livelihood of my friends, I'm okay with it.
No.
It sounds like the doctor who's giving him the vaccine for his COVID is probably on a slope, providing that.
Well,
Maybe. Don't worry. Services there. Just
the idea of injecting oneself with ACE2 sensitive spike proteins as a way to stop a virus from using that vector is the most brutal way you can use RNA on the face. Just for somebody who plays with biohacking a little bit, like it's like picking a door with a crowbar, what they're doing.
It's scary stuff.
Yeah, actually making people vulnerable.
So what else is in the news, Lisa? I haven't been keeping up.
I mean, I could go through my personal Twitter.
No, let's.
If you follow me on Twitter, you will get quite a bit of news and current events.
Let's talk about, before we go into the Pennsylvania event, can we talk about JD Vance?
Yeah.
I'd like to hear people's conversation about JD Vance. I'll go last.
Greg, you're muted.
Greg, you're muted. We lost your sound, Greg.
Somehow. Oh, maybe your ear thing died. We can't hear you.
No.
I'll be right back. Oh, now
Okay.
now it says you're muted, but
All right, Lisa, you're next.
okay.
JD
Well,
Vance, thoughts?
I've seen pictures with, apparently now he's taller. He's got a problem with the line on his neck.
What?
So
Really?
I think everyone should enjoy the movie and not get too hung up on it, to be honest. I still don't think we're going to have an election, at least not at a normally scheduled time.
Well,
I'm not too
I think we're going to, now after the events in Pennsylvania, and I think the JD Vance pick was, of the list, I think we talked about this before, of the short list that was getting shorter and shorter, and he remained on that list. He was my best hope of those that were on that list, even though I didn't like really any of them. I was disheartened when he talked about recently, we got to hit Iran hard because that's what will make them pull back. I was disheartened about that.
Is that from his military training, though?
Yeah, I think
right.
Ex-Marine.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Right. He's extremely intelligent, without question. And graduated from Yale Law, is senator. But here's the scariest part for me, and I will defer to Whitney Webb, who I really cherish what she has to say because she researches it so well. Her big red flag was he was funded in his political career from Peter Thiel, who has CIA all over him. NSA, he is the intel super state. He's a mover and shaker in that intel super state. And for him to fund Thiel early on was either a form of manipulation.
He funded Thiel, or Thiel funded him?
He funded Thiel's run for Senate. Thiel funded JD Vance. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thiel funded JD Vance. And there's a strong tie there economically. And then JD Vance was part of a drug company that sold to Pfizer or something to that effect. So that was like strike 2. And then strike 3 for me was the whole military, industrial complex support. So I got, and because he was inside the Beltway, inside DC, and not someone outside of DC. But then I have to think back and go, whoa. I am. Come on, William, step back. Trump is a moderate. He's in his late 70s. He's not thinking in your terms. He's a moderate. So he's going to pick someone like JD Vance as the best we could hope for, I guess. He's not going to be one of these that's going to take down the system.
Well, think of it like this. he's either a good choice or a bad choice depending on how he's deployed. Right? Like if he grabs Cheney level power, we're all fucked. Because this guy thinks that you can take the one ring that is the administrative state and turn it to the purposes of national conservative goals, which you cannot. Right? Like there is no pathway to that. If you try to make the machine not serve Sauron, it still serves Sauron. That is a progressive machinery. You not achieve reactionary ends by turning it barrel end the other way around. It will just backfire on you.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to use that machine. You have to throw it into the fire, right?
Right.
That's the way I see the administrative state. So if we task him with that problem, no good. If we task him with military, problem, right? But if we point him at the thing that really the vice president's supposed to do, preside over the Senate, I think he's perfectly suited for that.
See, but there's, politically strategy wise, I don't know who the governor of Ohio is, but now the governor of Ohio is going to replace him by appointment, right? So that's not smart because we had a conservative Republican, shall we say, as a representative of the center of Ohio. Who's he going to appoint?
When's the speed up for election now?
Well,
is it this cycle or the next?
Maybe so. So then the next point is,
people are talking about his wife a lot because she's
really?
Indian, I guess. And her history.
They seem like a nice couple, actually. That seems like a normal functioning human there with his wife.
What have you heard, Lisa, about her?
I just had
anything about
it was all rumors, so I don't really know, but they were saying that that she had either, I think, dim history or connections with dim history, and then they were also, making racist comments about her skin color and things that about like maybe her belief system because she's Indian or whatever. I don't know.
Well, free speech, right? Like it sucks. I don't like that kind of speech, but that's exactly the kind we have to defend.
Yeah. And see, Vivek said everything that I wanted to hear, if we're going to have someone on the national level, but I couldn't trust
That's alarming to a certain degree.
But I couldn't trust him.
Right.
He
tells you everything you want to hear. You should have a little red flag going off.
I shouldn't say everything. I digress. But anyway,
right? No, you and I are not going to have anybody come up for
sure. He's strong libertarian viewpoints, and when I say libertarian, I'm not talking about libertarian like the person who's been nominated for as a libertarian. I'm talking about libertarian as in agorist, libertarian. Vivek had strong libertarian viewpoints, like shutting down completely the Department of Education, shutting down completely the FBI. Things of that nature were libertarianism.
He flew off the rails for me on foreign policy because he was arguing not that we stop intervening in other countries, and if you stop trying to screw with the world stops screwing with you. Is sort of the philosophy I think is reasonable, right?
Yeah,
you can look at history and point to every single thing that has ever happened to us being attributed to some people we pissed off when we fucked them over, or took the president they elected out of office or whatever, right? Like,
right.
Iran's a great example. They're trouble for us right now because we made them trouble.
Right.
Go ahead. I am.
No, you first, Lisa. Ladies first.
I was just.
I just want to say about Vance though.
Go ahead.
Being long-winded in a lead-in.
You're okay.
The thing that I do not like about what they're focusing on is well calculated to make me not like him. So I'm withholding judgment until I get a little bit more direct speech, because all I'm hearing are narratives coming through the idea manipulation engine, telling me about the parts about him that I will like the least, probably on purpose.
That's
Good
a great
point.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, I'll have to pass. Oh, something about Twitter. Never mind. I forgot completely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. I should have wrote it down. Oh, no, that's not it either.
It's okay. It'll come to you. Well, I guess time will tell, right? For what's going to happen with Vance. But remember, he's going to be the standard bearer now in 2028. If Trump wins, and I don't see how in any way, shape, or form the Democrats could put up anybody to go up against the fist shaking fight. His popularity and went through the roof.
And he doesn't have the family connections that Bush did to carry it after Reagan.
Yeah. And remember, Vivek and Vance were classmates and came, both come from Ohio, are very close, so are, within like 50 miles from each other, and were classmates at Yale Law School. Mm-hmm. So they've been friends for a long, long time.
Smack in the middle of the cathedral, aren't they?
Yeah. So who knows what that future might hold.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't. If there is an election,
smart choice.
Yes. If there is an election and the selection has been made, because it's a selection, not election. If a selection has been made and Trump is put into office, remember Biden was just the puppet that they could easily control. Harris would be a puppet that could easily control, and if Trump is truly anti-deep state or semi-anti-deep state, his past record of appointees in his cabinet do not speak that, but in my opinion. But if he is truly anti-deep state, then I hope to God he doesn't expand the FBI and give them their new building somewhere else or whatever the case might be. I hope he actually starts dismantling it. But the deep state, I'm going to make a prediction. The deep state, if Trump is anti-deep state, then the deep state is going to do whatever they can to sack the economy to make Trump's tenure as his presidency horrific. And that's would be my prediction. That's how they will manipulate him, is they will crush him politically, like constant impeachments. The whole news media will go after him like we've never seen before. And they will crush the economy to get Trump because they don't give a damn about us.
Oh, yeah. They were willing to throw out the economy just so they could get their ratings back from social media during the government authoritarianism over public health crisis that we had.
And Hunter is CIA. I don't care what you say. That's why he was untouchable.
Dude, of course he's CIA. What do you think? What do you think was on that laptop? Right? They don't hire somebody without first sending you into a room with a prostitute and a camera on you. Like,
it was probably Biden. Yeah, Biden was getting out of line, so they shot across the bow. We're going to get your son. We're going to expose your son if you don't do this, X, Y, and Z.
But if you do this, then you're going to make a lot of money in Ukraine, right?
And China.
And China, yeah. The China one didn't pan out as well as the Ukraine one did because they couldn't start a war.
Right.
But
my son-in-law said, well, who should I vote for? He's recently joined the military. Who should I vote for? And to keep us out of war.
Whoever you want.
Trump's got the track record for that.
Yeah.
That's right.
No, Trump does have a track record for that.
Ever.
I suspect that he is paying nice lip service to the warmonger crowd. They let them talk at that NatCon convention. I suspect that's about as much air as they're going to move in Trump's presence for the rest of it. He's not going to have Nikki Haley in his cabinet. If he does, I might go throw up.
No, but she's promoting him or supporting him now. She finally, she was the last one to step down.
Probably in exchange for him not saying something shitty about her desire to start wars.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Don't piss off Raytheon anymore through their effigy. The great fucking Nikki Haley, right?
Or Boeing.
Boeing
so the thing that gives me hope, though, guys, and we've talked about this a little bit, I think, actually, Sean and I talked about it the other night. Executive Order 13957, originally enacted October 21st, 2020, right before Donald Trump left office. This act made anybody who works in the administrative state as part of the accepted service, the people who they can't fire because they're not allowed by law. Only political appointees can be fired by the president. Well, it turns all the people who touch policy into political appointees.
It turns them what?
Turns them into political appointees. It cordons them off from the selected service and says, guess what? You're appointees now. It's genius.
And it was actually so dangerous to them that Biden went out of his way not just to rescind it right away, but to enact a law that will delay its reenactment by 2 or 3 months, which is the worst he could do. So 2 to 3 months into Trump taking over, it's already on his platform, but that's going right back into place. And that means all of those positions that touch on policy that were unfireable if they decided to go rogue, fireable. More executive state or more administrative state people will be fireable by the guy who we're ostensibly electing to go shrink it. So I think that's probably a good sign that he's going to have a better time of it this time around.
I think that makes me think of this. Oh, did I do it right? This one.
Bob Menendez?
Menendez got found guilty on all counts. And listen to what he has to say about it. Because I think with what Greg just said, you are about to see that moment where they're all worried. We know that they all have their dual citizenship with Israel or whatever.
Good afternoon. Obviously, I'm deeply, deeply disappointed by the jury's decision. I have every faith that the law and the facts did not sustain that decision and that we will be successful upon appeal. I have never violated my public oath. I have never been anything but a patriot of my country and for my country. I have never, ever been a foreign agent. And the decision rendered by the jury today would put at risk every member of the United States Senate in terms of what they think
I believe
a foreign agent would be.
Yeah, I think so too. They should be worried about what is a foreign agent after his conviction.
Talking about drives me nuts about when they catch corruption. They always catch corruption when it's somebody self-dealing, but they for some reason have no capacity to catch it when the corruption is them colluding together to fuck with all of us. Yeah. How is it that we never prosecute any of that corruption? That's what I want to know.
Well, I think that's what's happening.
A guy buys a yacht with his fucking political contributions. That guy's going to jail. Guy buys his fellow senators or creates a secret society or buys some administrative state guy, pays whoever he needs to sway the appointment process. That shit goes behind the scenes and nobody sees it. They tank a company and win off the stock, that shit goes on behind the scenes. State crimes against the demos do not get prosecuted. When they do prosecute corruption, it's always some guy self-dealing. It's like they don't want us to know the other kind exists.
Wow.
But hasn't that just changed with, by Trump going through the process that he went through? Of course, we're rolling back some of that, but saying that, no one's above the law and that if you're doing an official act, yes, you have sovereign or.
They just accused him of self-dealing, though. That's the only one they'll do. They won't put him in front of the court and say
they might all be
court and say you actually set out. You actually set out to collude. Oh, I'm sure they all are, right? That's how they keep their coalition of thieves going.
Their mansions, yeah.
It's like in crypto, when you stake, like if you go out and start flooding your project or like corrupting the data that they're sending through your node or whatever, they're gonna slash your stake. You got his stake slashed.
Right.
What do you think about?
What he was trying to do, they didn't want him to do.
Well, New Jersey is so corrupt, and just like Philadelphia is so corrupt. Menendez has got an ugly, ugly history. Wasn't he also on the Epstein list? Most likely. He's horrible. I'm glad that they got him in court. I think it's going to go to appeal, and it'll probably just kind of fade off into the wind. Mm-hmm. And if anything, a slap on the wrist, and it's business as usual. And there's probably another 80 more people in the Senate just like him that have gold bars in their freezer of some sort, or the big payoff.
What's really fascinating to see is what he's done over the last few weeks on committees he's appointed to that pissed off somebody. Like if we look for the sourest face after every comment, we might find the person who decided his stake was getting slashed.
Yeah. Yeah, who knows what? Always when you hear these corruption stories getting exposed, you're thinking, oh, so he pissed off the wrong people, so they're exposing him. It's not that he got caught.
Right.
Well, the toxic thing to me is that it paints the image that there is an active effort to stymie corruption.
Yeah, like, oh yeah, we're here
Why-
to fight corruption.
Yeah, you're gonna hang that guy out in
that's
effigy for a
official
few
list.
gold bars. Like, are you really not looking under the beds right now to see if we need to toss the cells to see if everybody's obeying the rules after something like this happens?
Yeah. How would you like to have that pillow talk with your wife? Sweetheart, I kind of hide some bars here. Will you agree with me and take the fall for this, sweetheart? Sure, my love.
Oh, come
Just
on.
whatever it takes to keep you in the Senate.
Those guys are colluding together, man. Any good husband-wife team that's going to go and get some corruption on better be co-conspirators.
Oh my gosh! And then I if Joe Rote was here, I know he would say the same thing. And how many people have dual citizenship? And shouldn't that
was
be
my
banned?
point.
I can
That
get
was-
it. I just found out.
That was my
Um,
point, was that they all have citizenship with Israel. And that's actually, there's a letter right before they killed JFK that, and I can't remember if it was Rumsfeld. I think it was Rumsfeld
Rumsfeld wrote it.
wrote him a letter. And he said, basically, do not ask for them to present or expose their Zionist alliance. You know, it's not a good idea. You're not going to make people happy, and all that is. And then JFK gets shot right after that.
So many reasons for him to be a marked man on that.
Mhm.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
You-
So
yeah, it
on to the big
Okay.
news. What took place on Saturday? Trump slightly turning his head and
So
getting
lucky.
only his ear nicked. Providence.
so lucky.
Providence.
Yeah. No, I think that shooter was incompetent, honestly. I think he got lucky.
I mean, a 20-year-old. If there was a policeman standing on another policeman's shoulders and spooked him, and now he knew he had to get the shot off right then and there. He
Well,
was
if he'd had any
rushed.
training, he'd have aimed for the center mass on an old man.
Yeah. Other than maybe he had a bulletproof vest on, but
A
even
millimeter
still,
only matters if you're trying to be Master Chief.
yeah, even still, it's just so many questions. So many questions.
I'm going to
by
ask the biggest
Secret
one I
Service.
have. Do you think that he was sent by somebody in sort of the way that people were sent to kidnap Governor Whitmer?
I think it was more like an MK Ultra, but 2.0. It's much better. Now, get this. I just learned today his father, supposedly libertarian, and his mother, Democrat. And in that, I thought that was interesting. He used his father's gun. I don't know. I don't know. Was there a second shooter? What, how about
telling
the
us he
people that
used-
were
they used his
securing the
father's gun,
building?
right? Like,
The people
know
that were
that.
securing the building were inside the building. You didn't think they heard something up on the roof, on a metal roof?
oh no, there were people shouting for 2 minutes, right? Like
Yes.
there's somebody up on
Yes.
whatever the hell was
Well,
going
even
on.
this guy, this Secret Service guy in this video I'm showing you guys, apparently he was moving people out of the way right before it went off, and he's crouching and moving people off right
It was
before.
either gross incompetence of a kind that you would never permit from an agency tasked with doing stuff like protecting the chief executive with their bodies and their lives,
Not gross.
or it was colluded. They were in on it. Somebody, probably not the guys who were throwing themselves in front like heroes. Those guys I can't impeach because they were on the spot as soon as they knew there was something going on.
True.
The people in charge of making sure that they knew that something was coming before the trigger got pulled. The people who were supposed to, prevent the bullet and human version of 9/11 from happening at a really contentious point in our history. Those people are either the world's biggest fucking morons to have ever been let through the door, and the person that hired them should be fired and never allowed to hire another person again, or somebody was in on this. That's my opinion.
Occam's razor to me tells me somebody was in on it. Now there's leaks.
Which side?
A SWAT team was supposed to, a state SWAT team was supposed to secure that roof. Come on. If a SWAT team was supposed to secure that roof, I don't think they would stand down and go inside the building because it was hot.
Well, I mean, those snipers were under they were not under a reciprocal fire type of embargo on their weapons lock. Like they were weapons free. They were allowed to fire at anybody who looked like they were a threat.
True. And now, and to speak to that a little bit, I know their scopes were more set for further distances, and they were
That's
probably
stupid,
told
too.
that there was SWAT team was supposed to be on that building, you know. So,
Well, I mean,
so we
whoever
hear.
showed up
Who
was
knows?
supposed to show
Who
up for
knows
that
the
shift,
truth?
right?
So if it was set up, but by who? By which side? Because this has spurred
Anybody
a
who
lot
might
of
be
people on
impacted
the
by
fence.
1390 by that executive order, man.
Wait, what was that?
This
This
is-
has spurred what,
This
Lisa?
has spurred a lot of people on the fence to get off the fence. They're more MAGA than ever. My guess is whoever did coordinate it is also who coordinated. Maybe they're a choreographer or something, because there is this epic shot of this short woman. Of course, you put the short woman in front because you need to have Trump's head be visible for the shot, for not just. And I'm not saying the shot. I'm saying the photo shoot op, the photo op
shoot. Mhm.
that was created.
Well, in
that
reality,
she-
they're like billions
and they're
of
all
photos being
just
taken
positioning
all the time,
themselves,
right?
and then you see the incompetence of, sent straight from central casting, Officer 96 or something like this can't put her gun in the thing, and I just
mean,
think that
I think there's
think
a legitimate
that's-
reason to believe competency is an issue, though, right? Like we have to account for competency
come on.
because we have all of this ESG, DEI. We got to make sure somebody's
Right, and use every opportunity
to packing a
educate
police
people with
department
your
where you
narrative.
just screw it up. It could be innocent screw up based on bad policy on hiring. It really could
It's
be.
not innocent screw up. It was
Well, I mean, the
staged.
people screwing up.
I think it had a lot to do, a lot of
should know better.
similarities with the JFK assassination. And I would encourage everyone to go watch JFKX. And they talk about squibs. And he was down on the ground.
I hold responsible the highest ranked non-political appointee in every single branch of government, or in every single government agency responsible for securing that. If you're an accepted service person and you were the buck stops there guy for that particular part of the arena, it's on you, and you should be fired. Probably.
Well, so Joe,
should
Biden be held responsible for saying to put a target or put a bullseye on him?
No.
Oh, figure of speech. I was wrong, but a figure of speech.
Free speech.
Now
we
let
got
me
to
ask you,
defend
if
people's
you're-
right to
if
say
you're-
idiotic things about this.
If you're California Newsom or whomever, that is sharp, articulate, can talk, is a good politician, and we're called up by the DNC, hey, we need you to be on top of this ticket. We're going to do an open convention, and we need you to be on top. Would you run against Trump after this moment in time? His popularity is through the roof. It's political suicide, I would think.
But that's what I'm saying.
This would be the best time to appoint a single issue zealot to just scream about one issue and make enough to address it.
I think their strategy is let's just leave Joe on the ticket. He's going to lose anyway. No matter who we put up, he's going to lose, and let's funnel that money to the House and the Senate campaigns. So maybe we can have the Democrats win the House and Senate and stop Trump that way. That's their strategy, I think, and give up the presidency. Now, when you step back in a different frame, reframe your brain, as Scott, Adam says, you look back and say, okay, wait a minute. Deep state is going to do something different. Deep state's going to try to control it in other ways. And I think that's where it's going. Did we lose Greg?
Yeah, he popped off, but if he makes it back on for the last little bit, I think it's interesting. Yeah.
I miss Sean. Where's Sean?
I know he had.
Happy birthday, Sean. Related yesterday.
Yes, and it was his birthday this week.
And I have another shout out birthday wish to my wife. It's her birthday.
Well, happy birthday, Mrs. I Am. That's awesome. Lots of good birthdays in July.
Yeah.
Good people.
Well, now, do you think G really had a stroke? That's huge news.
It's interesting. So, Biden has the great infection. He'll be put back in the basement. Now Xi had a stroke. It's interesting to see these leaders that are, because then in the rest of the world, like there were elections and possible fraud in those because the most popular people were not reelected, the more conservative side or the right leaning side. So it's interesting to see this. Are we in a changing of the guard? I don't know.
I don't know. What happened in France, was it Le Pen won? She's a conservative, but then the far left and the center left united to basically mute that election. And so the people spoke. The people spoke. They're if the elections were not rigged, the people spoke and said, we want more conservative, leader. And their voice was circumvented by this far left and center left grouping in France.
We've designed
Italy, right?
Republican systems to be Democratic defeat devices, right? It's not surprising that they did that. Right. That's what they're there for.
So you guys think that really was the vote of the people in those areas? It was my understanding with the way that they were rioting and all that is not, that it was another stolen election. It
certainly had all of the indicia that would make it look sketch, and that's enough for it to be broken, right? Like it doesn't have to actually be stolen. It just has to have the appearance that it might have been.
Right. When you look at the election map in France, it's fascinating. It's all red, with the exception of one little blue point, which happens to be Paris. Right. All right. So it almost looks like the election map in the U.S., where like the Midwest is all red and just the cities, or New York, California is blue, whatever, right?
Or like the state of Kansas is all red except for Johnson County, so that's why we have a Dem governor and otherwise red.
Right. So Le Pen won by a large margin by the people. The people voted to go more conservative. And so now then the deep state rallies and says, let's just cut her off at her knees. So even if she is in power,
strategy is not going to pan out well for them.
Right. And I think that's what it was. So I don't think it was if maybe the vote was too large for her, and so they couldn't stop the vote.
Well, they also
it was a stolen election in Parliament, and cut her off that way rather than a stolen election in France. And that's what I'm gathering. Now, the UK, forget it. The UK has already gone. The UK voted left and liberal. Far left.
No, they actually had. I don't know if you guys ever have watched Paul Joseph Watson. You should check him out. His video on it. He's in the UK.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, he did a piece where he talked about the actual vote from a popular vote standpoint versus the number of seats it wins you, and they have some kind of mechanism in place where if you're a third party, it takes 10 to 20 to 100x more votes to win one seat.
Interesting. Well, we're down.
What was his name again? What was his name?
Paul Joseph Watson. You're going to like him, actually. I have a sense you're going to like Paul.
We're down to about 5 minutes. So we probably should do even though there's just 3 of us here, to do a quick goodbye. But what do you have going on?
I want everyone to go to Din Social.
Dude, that's a great hat.
Yeah. And if you don't like that, then shout out to Aaron Day. Stop the banks. No CBDCs. And last but not least, agorism, parallel economies, parallel voting systems. There you go.
That's a great hat.
But a shout out to my wife. It's her birthday again. I just want to shout out to her. And I encourage everyone to go watch Lisa and I on Mondays. We're now doing a show on Mondays where we're talking about either current events or history that ties into current events or who knows what. But if you go to the Din Social Mighty Layer, you can post something there, and sure enough, we will talk about it.
We'll talk about it. Yeah, that's great. Yes. Greg, how are you doing? What are you doing? What do you have planned?
I'm doing great.
Over the world.
And something that I'm going to do, if I were to do such a thing, I would definitely lay down the power I was handed as soon as it was mine.
That's true.
I'm actually not dumb enough to take the ring to begin with. But I will build devices that are meant to diffuse power so that nobody can have it, right? Like the way I think about what I do with Rivet, what we do with Rivet is like for our little slice of the thing that you can centralize and corrupt with power, we are building little pools of Mountain Dew that are the rest of our space can be swallowed by, and that's the end goal. But what I'm really interested in right now specifically is whatever the heck they've got on the voting machines at WikiLeaks, because they had a whole bunch of leaks from Diebold built into some of the published leaks. I haven't had a chance to read them yet.
Okay.
I will be digging into those. I think those will be an interesting thing to dig into because they indicate all of the ways that they were explicitly hacked to manipulate some election outcomes in the global south in the south part of the Americas. So if you want to get into some intrigue, and you also want to understand a little bit about how the company that builds our voting machines do business when they're doing dirty business, that's a place to look. And I'm going to be checking that out and maybe writing about it this week.
Wow.
And everyone should go watch your show with Sean from this week. It was really interesting on rolling back the Chevron deference, and that was
good. That was good show.
Great
We got
conversation.
some really good, clean, solid explanations and great questions, and just the whole thing was a really good show.
It was really great. So you guys watch that on Satoshi Sean's channel on YouTube. For me, I just the same old, same old. I always enjoy my Thursdays with you guys. I've really enjoyed starting having Mondays with I Am for I Am. And
Uh-oh. Did we lose her? Not at the wrap up.
I thought it was my 20-year-old car of a laptop again.
We can't hear you, Lisa. I hope you can jump in and end the stream.
Well, at the very least, she stopped on a relatively good face. Like if you hit pause on a movie and your face looks like that,
yes,
you won the pause game.
And Lisa, you did an excellent job today hosting the show. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Outstanding. Great topic.
Well,
thanks, y'all weird for suggesting this one.
Yeah, and super questions, like over the top, awesome questions. Many of them came from you, but the ones that didn't, you guys rocked too.
Derox and Time
Derox, and yeah, you guys slayed it with those questions. Those were fantastic.
But
I hope other people watching this will come to the layer and actually post questions, aspiring to be that good.
How ironic for her to step out as she's doing her outro. Yep. I just hope we can in the stream here under the 2-hour mark, some kind of algorithm or whatever it hits with that. But
looks like we've got 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can click X right at the time, and it should dump out if she's not on here.
Yeah. Hopefully.
I mean, it's running off of a protocol called RTC, which I think ends the last connection breaks.
Oh my gosh. My Wi-Fi went out, and I think it may go again. So I'm going to take us out of here. You guys take care. Join Dan.social, and we will see you guys on the flip side.
Good job today, Lisa. Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.